Okay, so welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at this idea
Yeah.
that we are God's Pinocchio.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting
It is, yeah.
sort of concept or metaphor
Yeah.
to kind of try and think through,
Mm-hmm.
I think, some pretty deep ideas around
Yeah.
faith
Yeah.
and purpose.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really
Yeah.
it's a really unique way to think about some of these concepts.
Yeah.
And it definitely caught my attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we've got this idea of,
Yeah.
we're all familiar with the story of Pinocchio, right?
Yeah.
Geppetto creates Pinocchio, wants
Yeah.
him to be a real boy.
Right.
And
There's a lot of
lessons to be learned in that story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But then, we connect that with this idea of being God's workmanship.
Right. So let's break that down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of our listeners are probably familiar with the story of Pinocchio,
Yeah.
but maybe not so familiar with this idea of
Right.
God's workmanship.
Yeah, so if we think about it, Pinocchio, he was crafted with love, with
Right.
intention. Geppetto
Right.
had a vision of
Yes.
what Pinocchio could become. And I think what the source here is suggesting is that God does the same thing with us,
Okay.
right? It's like Ephesians 2.10 says,
Yeah.
we are his handiwork, created with purpose.
All right. So we're crafted for a reason.
Yeah.
We're not just random.
We're not just random accidents, or like God's not just throwing things together.
Isn't
He's intricately crafting each of us
Right.
with a very specific design in mind.
So we are like Pinocchio in the sense that we are created
Yeah.
to become real. But what does that realness
Right.
actually look like for us?
What does it mean to be a real boy for us?
Yeah. And the source mentions this idea of good works.
Yeah.
And I think that probably for a lot of people, it can,
sound
what does that even mean?
vague, right?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Does that mean we all have to go and,
Yeah.
start charities or something?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. I think it's less
Yeah.
about the grand gestures, and it's more about aligning our everyday actions with the unique purpose
Okay.
that God has for each of us.
Okay.
So think about it this way.
Yeah.
What are you naturally good at?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you good at?
Yeah.
What brings you joy?
Yeah.
What problems do you see in the world
Yes.
that you feel passionate about solving?
Yeah.
And, maybe your good works involve using your creative talents to bring beauty into the world,
Yeah.
or maybe your good works are
Interesting.
using your analytical skills to develop solutions for some
Right.
pressing social issue.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's simply about extending kindness
Yeah.
and compassion to the people around you.
Okay. So our good works can actually look very different.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah. From person to person.
Yeah.
Depending on who we are and how God has kind of
Yeah.
uniquely designed us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
but the source also talks about
Yeah.
how God doesn't just create us and then just leave us to figure it out on our own.
Right. Yeah.
It talks about how he is
Yeah.
actively working within us.
Like he's involved in the process.
Yeah, it quotes Philippians 2.13. But
Right.
how can someone actually
Yeah.
experience that in their daily life?
Well, it's almost like
Yeah.
like having an internal GPS,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guiding us, but sometimes that signal can be really subtle.
Yeah.
Have you ever had like a sudden burst of inspiration?
Yeah.
Like seemingly out of nowhere
Yeah.
or like felt nudged
Yeah.
towards a certain decision or opportunity that you hadn't even considered before?
Yeah.
Or have you ever experienced this
Yeah.
like deep sense of peace
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of chaos?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
those could be signs
No.
God working within you.
That's these little kind of moments where we're like,
It's the little things.
yeah.
Prompting you,
Yeah.
guiding you,
Right.
equipping you.
So it's about sort of
Yeah.
tuning in and paying attention.
Yeah, being aware.
Yeah. To
Yeah.
those subtle but significant.
Yeah, the seemingly insignificant things.
Yeah.
That could actually be really profound.
Yeah. And that actually ties into this next point in the source,
Okay.
which is the idea.
Of entering God's rest.
Okay.
It quotes Hebrews 4.90.
Right.
But what does that even mean?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right?
Yeah, I mean, is it about like,
Yeah.
you know,
Is it just
sitting on a beach somewhere?
right?
and just doing nothing.
Yeah, like kicking back,
Yeah.
pina coladas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
No.
It's a different kind of rest.
Okay.
It's about
Yeah.
releasing the burden
Hey.
of trying to control everything.
Yeah.
Striving to prove ourselves.
Yeah.
Constantly worrying about outcomes. It's
Right.
about trusting that even when things feel chaotic, God is working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Weaving our efforts into his grand design.
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah.
imagine a tapestry
Yeah.
being woven, right?
Yeah.
From the underside,
Yeah.
it might just look like
Yeah.
this jumble of threads.
Right.
But from the top,
Yeah.
a beautiful picture emerges.
And that's kind of what trusting in God's rest.
So it's not about inactivity.
No, not at all.
It's about like an internal...
It's about this internal surrender, this deep trust in God's plan, even when we can't see the whole picture yet.
Yeah, and something I thought was really interesting was
Yeah.
the Source connects this idea of rest with finding true joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like those two things.
They go together.
Yeah?
Right. Because when
yeah.
we're trying to force our own plans,
Yeah.
we often end up feeling stressed
Yeah.
and unfulfilled. Like we're trying to jam a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
But when we surrender to God's guidance and we align ourselves with his purpose for us, that's when we discover the joy and satisfaction of truly becoming who we were created to be.
Okay, so that all makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do we actually figure out what that path is?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, if we're God's Pinocchio, how do we find our own unique journey to becoming real?
Well, I think that's where prayer, reflection, and attentiveness come in, Take some time to really consider what are your strengths? What are you passionate about? What are the things that break your heart in the world? What are you uniquely equipped to offer? What makes you feel the most alive? Where do you see a need that you could potentially fill? Those are all clues to your Pinocchio path.
All right, so it's paying attention to these inner whispers.
Yeah, little nudges.
And trusting that God is kind of leading us toward.
He's drawing us in.
Yeah.
Towards that ultimate purpose.
And the Source wraps up with this powerful reminder to seek God's kingdom. Above all else.
Above all else. Yeah. No, and
and I thought that was
it's huge.
Such a powerful way to kind of conclude.
Yeah, and if we connect that back to the Pinocchio metaphor, seeking God's kingdom is like allowing ourselves to be fully molded by his loving hands.
Okay.
Right? It's about prioritizing his values of love, of justice, of compassion in our daily lives. Not just for our own benefit, but for the good of everyone around us.
So we kind of come full circle then.
Yeah, we do.
We discover our purpose.
Yeah.
We experience true rest.
Yeah.
And we unlock this level of joy.
Yeah, that we could never find on our own.
Yeah.
It's true.
So to bring it all together, this whole deep dive, I think, has been incredible.
It really has.
We're like God's Pinocchio. Each carefully crafted with this unique purpose and destiny.
Yeah.
But the key is to trust in his design.
Yeah.
Rest in his plan.
Trust the process.
Yeah.
And
seek his guidance.
Absolutely.
As we kind of go on this journey towards becoming the real versions of ourselves.
I think it really does make you think, doesn't it? Like, if we truly believe that we are God's Pinocchio, that we're crafted with intention and purpose, how does that change the way we approach our everyday choices, our interactions with others, our contribution to the world? Yeah,
that's a question worth pondering for sure.
It is.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
For another insightful exploration.
Looking forward to it.
All right. See ya.
See ya.